So quick small anecdote. So I moved to Vancouver in 2015, and that was a special year for you. I moved here in May, and about a month later, we have this thing called the Technology Industry Awards. And something happened that night. Do you remember what happened that night?
I think I know where you're going, yeah.
So I'm just getting introduced to the Vancouver tech community, literally a month after I moved here from Ottawa. And a month into it, this guy named Jeff Booth gets named the Person of the Year in British Columbia's tech industry. And so since I moved here, I've been like, oh, well, Jeff Booth is the man, right?
That's what I told my wife. And try when she tries to get you to do the dishes, and you say, and she goes, "Oh, you can't do the dishes. You're the man of the year." And I say to her, "No, honey, I'm the person of the year. I'm better than all the women too."
Yeah, brave man. Jeff Booth, we're so thrilled to have you here. Jeff is a tech entrepreneur. He is a tech leader. He is now an author of The Price of Tomorrow. Why deflation is the key to an abundant future, which we will get into this evening. You helped, or you co-founded, you built, every time I say built, BuildDirect, I get tongue-tied. You led it through the .com crash. You led it through the 2008 financial crisis. Among many other things, now you're on like 30 boards. So thank you for being here this evening to share your insights and wisdom with everything. I think there's 4 things we want to cover tonight, and I'll say them in reverse order. Obviously, we want to talk about what the entrepreneurs in the room can do to build a company for the uncertain future and actually present that we live in. We're going to talk about the book, how that can feed into how entrepreneurs can build companies. We want to talk about, obviously, a bit about the BuildDirect journey. I think there's a lot of people here that don't know it and would appreciate hearing it. And then we start at the genesis of all that, which is who is Jeff Booth, Person of the Year, right? And to kick us off, we're gonna try something different than what we've done in the past. We're gonna get to know you really quickly in 60 seconds. All right, you ready for these rapid fire questions?
I'm ready.
Yeah, you ready?
I don't know these questions, by the way. So.
You hear that? iOS or Android?
iOS.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What do you have for breakfast?
Don't have breakfast.
Don't have breakfast?
No.
What's your favorite country to travel to?
Too hard to pick.
Too hard to pick?
Yeah, been to lots.
Who would you have over for dinner, dead or alive?
Obama.
Yeah, that's my answer too. Bernie or Biden?
Bloomberg.
Bloomberg. Oh.
Yeah. You'll get into it in the book conversation.
Yeah, perfect. When are you starting your next company?
I have 3 or 4 on the go right now.
Yeah, you have enough?
I just sold one, but 3 on the go right now.
Yeah, bacon or eggs?
Eggs.
Eggs?
Yeah.
Yeah, Coke or Pepsi?
Neither.
Neither?
Yeah.
Do you drink pop?
Beer.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know you through BuildDirect, also as Person of the Year. You started BuildDirect in 1999, but I'm assuming lots happened before then. What happened between Jeff Booth being born, brought into the world, to starting BuildDirect, which was a company that basically transformed the home improvement industry by making buying and selling equipment simpler through technology. So you'll get into that, but what happened before that?
School, incentive class, then fought against incentive class, just wanted to be normal, then dropped out of university to get into business faster, all these kind of moments that you think you know what you're doing. Started real estate, ended up buying a real estate company. I did really well at real estate, ended up buying a real estate company. That was a terrible mistake. Started a building company, and I started the building company because one of my clients wanted to buy my house, and then I needed to find a house, so I built a house, and then and I built that one, and I had to subdivide a lot, build another one, and then that one sold, and all of a sudden I had a building company. Through the pain of the building company, and I had to move a family into a hotel, furniture and storage, because I couldn't deliver the house on time, and just got mad and decided I'm going to solve this, and that's where BuildDirect was born.
Great.
So, yeah.
So BuildDirect, when was the first piece of code written? How did that happen? To be honest, I don't know anything about anyone else who started the company with you.
I look at
the other thing is, do you want to give your definition of BuildDirect? I gave one, but maybe you want to say what you thought. We'll get into it. Great, yeah.
So BuildDirect was 3 different companies over 20 years trying to, and product market fit, massive growth, destruction, 2008, new product market fit, massive growth, and then another one on the end that we didn't quite get through. So lots of learning through that. All the same thing, just different ways to try to achieve that in a world that's changing really quick. So start a company, by the way, I'm one of the mentors at CDL, Creative Destruction Lab. By the way, great program for anybody that's starting a company. But I look at the entrepreneurs that come through there, and I think of those people compared to who I was in '99 when I started this, and I go, oh my God, you're so much better than who I was. Myself and my co-founder, Rob Banks, we were useless. We had no idea. We just had this dream to solve this and no idea how to do it. Tiring teams, made tons of mistakes. And when we started in '99, and so you know what the market looked like in '99, where on the back of a napkin you could raise money. We didn't choose that. We raised money from friends and family, and so so I think we'd raised $1.5 million before the market completely collapsed. Now you have your friends and family in your business, and they wouldn't care, but we told them that it was going to work, and we had to make it work. And now you don't want to be .com, by the way, in March of 2000, then September 11th, planes fly into the towers, and we're still building a technology solution that's going to change the world. And so those are really, really trying times as you built that. Got it right, or got that first part right, and I remember January of 2000, revenue of $14,000. The end of the year, $1 million, next year, 14 million, next year, 28. It was, for all of the people told us it wouldn't work at all. It was just, but you want to believe you want to believe your stuff. Now you want to believe, everyone tells you you're so great. You want to believe it. And so it kept on growing into 2008. We were almost 60 million into 2008. But we charged everybody in advance, 3 months in advance. And in 2008, nobody could pay. Market stopped, and business went from about $60 million to $18 million overnight.
Sorry, 60 to 18.
57 million run rate to 18 million overnight, and we still owed the suppliers the 60. And not all of the 60, because but we weren't raising money because we didn't need to. We were paid in advance. Business was going. So that's a hard day to wake up to, by the way. And tons of companies going bankrupt in that time. It was brutal. We should have, but found an idea, or I found an idea in a shower, of all places, that by the way that we had originally constructed the data or the business model, kind of a fluke, that we had data that was really valuable. And that data turned into a potential. I had to sell my business. I had to sell our family house with 3 kids under 4, and sold our family house to make it through and everything else. But that business then, in the next 3.5 years, went from 18 to $120 million in revenue, and so it was just exploding again. And then another transition that we could not keep that business model, and went to try to. I should have sold the business at that point, though. is what I should have done. Sold it and started the new business instead of tried to change the existing business to the new platform.
So there's a couple things in there. I've heard you speak before, and you've talked about replacing your executive team a few times. And then something you mentioned here was, I don't know if anyone caught that, he said he sold his house, right? You want to tackle one of those?
Well, so here's the thing. Through the whole, I'm going to go up a level. So there's a whole bunch of learning in all of that. Most of the biggest lessons were my own learnings that I didn't know at the time. It wasn't but there's different teams that are required for different companies. The company each time was doing something totally different, and you have to upgrade your team. A lot of CEOs don't know it's them that need they keep hitting the same wall over and over again. If I hit a wall a couple times, I typically don't blame anybody else. If I do the same, it's me. And so, but again, I said it before, when you realize how much you've grown over that time, it's hard to look at anybody else. So yes, you have to upgrade your team. Yes, you have to constantly, I remember one of my board members one time, and I was raving about one of my employees. But he'd seen a pattern recognition that I hadn't before, and he came to me after the board meeting and he said, "I've seen great, and that's not it." But he did it in a really kind way, right? He cared about the business and everything else. He just had a pattern recognition of what great looked like at the next level, and I had a pattern recognition of what great looked to get us there. And there were two different things. Not the person was a really great person, and the person actually stayed in the business, but in the role that I had them in, they would have failed miserably. The selling the house, when you actually believe, by the way, we were right. The business after selling the house, and so you almost.
Do you mind,
yeah.
I guess, sharing a little bit about what led to having to even make that decision?
So somebody wants you. I've invested in a bunch of companies and everything else. You mentioned time, which is really critical, but people are going to want to know that you're all in. Right? And so in 2008, 2009, who is going to bet on the company if I'm not all in, right? I couldn't actually even ask anybody to bet on the company, so I went to my wife and said, "Here's what I'd like to do. If you're all in too, it could go to zero. That's the cost of going all in. But I think with all of this, if I can leverage that into more capital, I think we can get there." And so we made the decision to go all in.
So put us in that room. This is at your kitchen table. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're laying out the cards.
I have no problem dealing with the facts as they are.
Yeah.
And in that sheet, by the way, just to keep us going forward, mm-hmm. When I left BuildDirect, I wasn't let go of BuildDirect. I left with zero, without a paycheck, knowing that they were going to wipe out BuildDirect and change the equity completely. So I walked away with a zero, with a complete zero. But I knew that going in, and I knew that it didn't matter. My wife knew if this didn't work, we'd find something else. It's not like I'm unemployable. So it was. I kind of look for asymmetric bets: unlimited upside, limited downside. When you have limited downside and everything else in your life is still great, everything's almost an asymmetric bet, right? So it was actually not. It sounds like to other people a really hard thing to deal with. It wasn't for us at all, not a bit.
Yeah, and something you talk about in your book is about basically all that stuff is fine if you stay true to yourself and you do that sort of thing. And there's a whole section on that, and we'll get to that. So you left BuildDirect. Like I mentioned, you're on a ton of boards.
Yep.
Theoretically, you're using a lot of the insights, sort of the pattern recognition, which is something else I've heard you talk about, to advise these CEOs. Can you talk a little bit about some of the leaders you're working with right now and what you're excited about? Some of this is in the book, but just talk about, some of the leaders you're working with right now.
So I'm on, I actually went in, again, up a level. I think I was asked in the last 18 months it's certainly over 200, it's probably closer to 300. I've been asked to join that many boards. And even now, it's probably 2 a week, which is actually staggering. It's so humbling to say it. But so you run out of time.
So I'm going to have to ask then, how do you decide? So you're going to get into that.
So, and that's where I was going with this. Yeah. So I have to love the people I'm dealing with. And I mean, and not I need to love them. I need to care so much about their success that I need to be all in. I need to think that the company has a chance to impact other people in a super profound way. And I have to believe that I can help in a big way. I have to believe that I can really help. And even then, you run out of time. So some of them, Terramera is one of them, that I joined just to help Karin, the founder. I saw myself in him earlier on, some of the things that I had to, so I just went to help coach him. And then I joined the board, then I became chairman of the board, and they last year raised almost $50 million US, and it was way oversubscribed. But game changing. I'm helping a company in Thailand where I set up the team in a marketplace in Thailand. The CEO is exceptional. She's just fantastic. That company went from 1 million in revenue in the second quarter of last year to over 120 million in revenue in the fourth quarter. Cubic Farms is a company it's my, at 5 years old, it was my best friend who moved away between 5 and 12, and I didn't see him until he sold it. I didn't know where he was, actually, because at 12 years old, I didn't know where he moved or anything else. And he moved to New York, sold his first business, came back, started a company called Cubic Farms, asked me for some advice. I started helping him and then just got involved in that. A company called Addy that I'm pretty excited about. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So lots.
I guess with these companies, or just whenever you're advising entrepreneurs and stuff, I guess what are the mistakes or you feel like the lessons that you're sharing over and over again? Like what are just the common things that you're having to say to a founder? Be careful about this. Something you said in actually you're talking in a Business in Vancouver article, something you talked a lot about was what you had mentioned earlier, which was pattern recognition. And you're sort of talking about how I guess BC's, I don't know if the tech ecosystem isn't old enough, or we're missing that. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
So when I talk about pattern recognition, and so there's not enough people here, and this isn't a bad thing, it's just what will create more of those people here. There's not enough companies here, or there's not enough people in leadership companies that have gone through the whole gamut, right? And created something really, and it looks different, and you look different. The same job as you have as a CEO in the beginning is if you still keep doing that job, you'll die. You do a different job. And so that's hard, because the thing that you're so good at, the thing that gives you almost a drug because everyone tells you you're so good at, you have to stop doing and get somebody else who's better than you at that, and you have to do a different job that you're not good at yet. And so a lot of the pattern recognition on that whole thing is actually, why I go back to love, is we don't want to tell people those things. We don't want to tell, and I don't actually understand that. I'm going to give everybody a framework. Please feel free to use it, copy it, share it everywhere. Don't say it was me. I look at every single person I deal with, including myself. We all have a sign on our forehead, pointed outwards that everybody else can read, that tells everyone what's stopping us from our own success. Fair? You can see it on people that you spend any time with. They can see it on you. We tell ourselves a lie in that relationship when we spend time with them, and that lie goes something like this. I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to tell them because I don't want to hurt their feelings. But if you pull on that lie, pull on that string, you'll see it's a lie. The lie goes something like this: I care more about what they think of me than them. Fair? Because most of those people will have no problem telling what's on the sign to everybody else in their network, right? And I just think of that process and I think, what a colossal waste of time. And look at the invert of that. Look at right now I'd like you to think about the 3, 5 most important people in your life that if they passed away that you would care about like crazy. You would think about them forevermore. And likely those people to do the exact opposite. They would never tell anybody else. They would turn the sign around to you and tell you. And what they're saying in that is, I care so much about you, I have to tell you this. And if you just think about what I just said, if you want your time to massively expand, only have those people in your life. Only. Anybody else that you can't do that, both of you talked about vulnerability. If you can't do that, if you don't expect it from somebody in your life, if you can't do it for somebody in your life, don't have them in your life because everything else is a colossal waste of time. So what I would say is every business is made up of people. What I just told you, 99.9% of people won't do. So if you want real success in business, do what is rare, right? Do what no one else will do. And it's so attractive, it creates, and so that what I just told you is what gives us superpower to be able to help. And by the way, I learn at a way faster rate because people do it for me.
It's all because you have those people in your life.
Exactly.
Yep, yeah, totally get you. So speaking of being contrarian, let's talk a little bit about your new book. A few things here. How do you write a book? Hopefully you can tell us a little bit about that. For those of you who haven't read it, I know some of you bought books, and if you want to pick up the version you bought with your ticket, so it'll be at the front desk. Tom will give you that to show them your ticket. What is the thesis? I guess, I don't know how much you want to give away. Right? What's the thesis? And then hopefully we can go through it. I have my copy here with notes and dog ears. Did
you like it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I could hear your voice as I was reading through it. But yeah, what's the thesis? What's the book about? And why did you feel the need to write a book?
Okay.
It's not a simple thing to do, right?
I can't see hands, but who here knows about the engineer's ring? Oh, lots of hands. Okay. For those that don't know, bridge collapse, Montreal in the 1920s. Essentially, engineers, when you graduate as an engineer, effectively says our work has consequences. If you think about technology, and again, every single company, I would not be involved in any single company unless I'd already said it. Technology used for good to make our world a better place. Every CEO that I'm involved in is actually trying to make that happen through technology. And here's what I realize, our work has consequences. I'm massively excited about the companies I'm involved with. They can provide riches like crazy, but it's not the riches I actually really care about in the end. It's the impact is what I really care about in the end. And if you think about, so what is the book about? Technology is deflationary. And I see some nodding of heads and everything else. And so you can see it in your phone. My first phone cost me $2,000. My first phone bill was $1,200. And all it did is made phone calls, right?
That story is in there. Why it was $1,200? Yeah.
And so everything we use with technology gets more and more abundant. And it costs less. In fact, every single large company you're dealing with today, Google, why do you deal with it? Because of the deflation, right? It's free search. Then you have Waze that's free. Then it's free this. Amazon, more and more for less and less. Then they add movies and it's less and less and everything else. That all of the companies you're celebrating in deflation today. So if that's the case, by the way, it's not just deflationary, it's exponentially deflationary. because of Moore's law, what technology is riding on. So it should be. But somebody talked about the hype cycle in business. Why the hype cycle exists? If you just take, I'll do it. Instead of asking the question. If I fold a piece of paper 50 times, I've asked this question, fold it on itself 50 times. How thick is the piece of paper? I've asked this question. You can only fold it 7 for all those people who know that you can only fold it 7. But if you could continue to fold it on itself 50 times, how thick would it be? I've asked audiences all over the world, tens of thousands of people. Most times I get an answer about this thick. A couple times to the roof and maybe once or twice to the moon. The answer goes to the sun. Piece of paper folded. And why that matters is the same thing that drives technology hype cycle and everything else. The first folds are insignificant. And so we could never understand that it moves that much. And the thicker folds, so we expect, in a hype cycle, we expect something to be crazy great, and then it's nothing, and it collapses. But it keeps folding and folding and folding. And Moore's law is an exponential pattern that's driving there. And why that is critically important for everything we're doing today is if you're looking backwards at technology, likely, we're on fold 33. In 18 months, we double the technology that we've had in the last 50 years. So the world isn't just moving faster, it's moving exponentially faster, and it will continue at that rate. Why that's important is if we've had this much technology deflation, and I imagine a number of you are saying, no, but prices are getting higher and more expensive. Housing is getting more expensive. Everything's getting more expensive. And what I can say to you flat out is it's because we're manipulating currencies to do so. We've printed $185 trillion of essentially debt in the last 20 years to stop deflation, to stop things from getting cheaper, because we don't know the rules have changed to the game. Of the game. So all over the world you have printing and printing and printing. And if you print money in China, if everybody in China knows that they're going to reduce the value of the currency, the money is going to fly out of China into our real estate. And that's just an example, or stock prices. And anybody who has stock prices or stock or real estate gets an unnatural win, or technology companies, or all the giant funds that are raised by technology companies are the same reason, because in a zero interest rate world, everybody's searching for growth. And so you have this massive divide, and it's enriching anybody that has assets and picking the pocket of anybody who doesn't. And so we're on this treadmill working harder and harder and harder, racing harder and harder when things should be getting cheaper, and they're getting more expensive for most people, and it's causing society to break. And most of the talk is about the second and third order consequences of the problem, and nobody's talking about it. So this is a long way to answer your question. The reason I'm writing my book is I couldn't be I was talking about it for 10 years, watching society break everywhere, and couldn't sit by idly. I was just, the same reason I started the company. I got pissed off that nobody's talking about it and said, okay, I'm going to do this.
So throughout the book, it's quite fascinating. You jump from economics to sociology to business leadership, AI. You cover
a lot of ground.
Yeah, you cover.
But you have to.
That was going to be my question. I guess to be someone who's starting a company nowadays is I guess sort of interest or expertise in multiple disciplines important, or this is something that, again, you really care about? So
I've always been curious. I think so. The thing that drove this is I've just naturally been curious. Probably since I was 20, I've read 50 books a year. So and totally different types of books. So that gives me a pattern recognition across a landscape of things. But if you're just in one of these silos, I use this example in the book, and I probably don't explain it as, hopefully I explain it better here than even in the book. But I will do. So we look at Blockbuster, and everybody here in technology and everything else would you'd go through the Harvard case studies and Blockbuster and everything else, and you'd say, how did they miss that? How did they miss buying Netflix for $50 million? And remember, you have a hindsight of perfect information, and you're biasing what you would do in that time because of that hindsight, because you know what happened. Here's the decision, because they were really great executives, right? I'm sure they weren't just dummies, and they had 9,000 stores. I remember, some of you are too young, but at the time, download speeds were, it would take forever to you'd download a movie, 3 years later you'd watch the movie. And so the only miss that they made is a miss on how fast technology was changing the game. Netflix business model at that time was sending DVDs, and it was a shitty business model. So it seems perfectly relevant in that time, in missing the exponential change of technology, to say let's add candy aisles to our stores. That's a good idea, right? Now we know it's a crazy idea, but what they missed is the underlying architecture of everything was changing so dramatically that they couldn't see that. And so why that matters a lot for what we're talking about right now is the underlying architecture of our world, our economic systems, everything else is built upon, is actually at the exact same moment. And what governments all over the world, and we are doing too, is adding candy aisles to the stores. That's what's happening.
There's a line in the book, I forget, I don't think it's your line, but you quote some, and it was basically that the companies that were built for the 20th century are basically designed to fail in the 21st century.
Yeah, Salim Ismail.
Something else in the book that you write is basically this notion of having strong beliefs but weakly held. Can you dig into that a little bit and what that means?
Yeah, so there's a couple of people that have talked about that, but it's something I really believe in. So you should always be looking for information that contradicts what you believe. In a world that's moving really fast, the advantage goes to people who can do that. So if you're constantly delaying and trying to gather more and more evidence, you can't really run a business. You have to make decisions to run a business. But you have to put up that decision, make the best decision, thoroughly investigate, make a decision, and then if new information contradicts that decision, make new decision as fast as you can. So strong beliefs gives you the conviction to take steps, right? Because you have to move forward. Weakly held gives you the humility to get all the people around you to make sure that you're always going to make the next best decision. And actually coaching that to your team, telling your team that, inspires them too. You have to make decisions. Everybody has to be aligned on a decision. In my teams and any of the companies and everything else, we will debate anything and I will hear everything. And everybody has their say, but still at some point a decision needs to be made and everybody has to align to that decision. Walk out the door all aligned. If a new decision needs to be made and the person over here was right in the first one, it's no I told you so or anything else. You just drop and you make a new decision. And so when you can run a team like that, and you can be really clear in the rules of running the team like that, everybody has a voice and you just move way faster. But it's around trust.
I want to hug all the time, but I shouldn't because we've got an audience here. So I don't want to skip through things, but do you want to sort of, the end of the book, there's a call to action, right? Do you want to touch on that?
Sure.
Before we get into Q&A?
What I would suggest, and by the way, this is not so I can sell more books. You don't make money selling books. Please go buy the book. And share the book if you like it, because it's so important. It is so important. There are a ton of things just in business you'll get out of it and everything else. More important, I think you'll be way more informed in what's going on today, and hopefully invite you into this conversation. So please do that. what I would say in the final, if technology, first actually a show of hands, who believes in this room that technology going forward in the next 20 years is going to provide way more jobs, net new jobs, globally? Okay, that's not so 40%? Okay, less 30%. I'm completely on the other side, by the way. If I say what is happening with AI, I think that I don't see how possibly it's going to provide more jobs. But again, we could debate that.
You go into that. You can talk about that a little bit if you want.
Okay, we have
enough time.
We don't
buy the book.
But go into the AI chapter. See what's see. But economics is built. By the way, why this matters a lot is most of your decisions are around economic decisions, right? We might choose to drive a car that's less expensive and worse for the environment, while we aspire to drive a car that's better for the environment that costs more. We make a whole bunch of decisions that we want to make for everybody else, but we make different decisions, and they're typically economic decisions are at the heart of that. How our families are, how our kids go to school, everything, how would our jobs look like, everything else. They're mostly economic decisions. And there is a belief that economics is driven by value. And economics is not driven by value. Economics is driven by scarcity. The air that you breathe is the number one thing in everybody's life right now in this, because if we took it out of this room, everybody would die. Before water, before anything else. So air is probably the most valuable thing. Yet it's free. Why is that? Right? Because it's abundant. And technology is creating abundance everywhere. And what that would allow us to do, if we could understand that, is prices would fall, and we would create more abundance. The people who wanted to work more would work more, and they would create. Capitalism would work perfectly in that environment. And the people that fell off the job ladder wouldn't fall so far and need a handout from the people on the other side that we're gifting money to by engineering more and more debt in the world to be able to raise asset prices. What's happening today, the division of society, is happening because there's a whole bunch of people, and by the way, and I had to face some facts as I wrote this. I'm one of them. I'm on the winning side, massively on the winning side. And I had to face the fact that a lot of the money, a lot of the wealth and every privilege and everything else is just because, it's not because of ingenuity. It's because I had assets before other people had assets, and I had technology companies and everything else. And so those asset prices rising is a natural gift, as well as an unnatural picking the pocket for the other. The problem is once you get too divided, nobody can see the other side. They're screaming at each other on the other side. And that's what our political systems look like today. Less so in Canada, more so in the US, but not just in the US, all over the world out of the same thing. So why are we butchering capitalism to do that? Because we can't see we're in a blockbuster moment, is really the key thought. Why don't we let deflation happen?
Yeah, I was going to say that's how you end it, saying, why don't we let deflation happen? Thanks, Jeff. I don't know where the other mic is, but let's do some Q&A. Oh, here we are. Who wants to kick us off? I'll pass this around. There we go. Where's that hand? Great. And I'll just let you guys hand that around.
Hi, I'm Naomi. You talked a little bit about vulnerability being important and you being able to tell someone honestly about, their faults or whatever in the same back. I know that being vulnerable is actually a really scary and hard thing to do, and it's a very courageous thing to practice doing. I'm going through a personal development program myself to learn how to do that, so I'm just curious as to how you learn to do that.
Probably like anything, you see what works, and you keep doing what works. Rob, my co-founder of BuildDirect, and we're still awesome friends, he used to say, "You make everybody cry, and they love you for it." But he never knew why I made them cry, right? He only knew why I made him cry, or vice versa. But I just can't. I actually cannot sit and care about somebody and not be super honest with them, because I feel like I'm disingenuous with my time with them, and so ironically in that it's probably selfish. It's selfless as well. It shows up as selfless as well. But I cannot believe people actually spend time with people and then go and talk about their back behind their backs. I actually cannot believe they do that. It's unreal, because they're only wasting their own time and the other person's.
It sounds like you maybe grew up with good value systems. And that's what you had.
I did.
Yeah.
I was wildly fortunate in my family structure, everything else. My parents, wildly fortunate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thanks. Perfect. Next. Yeah.
I'll go. Hi, Jeff. I teach a course on the future of work, and I'm with you on the other side of the coin. And I'm really worried about the future of work. Andrew Yang's book, you might have heard and seen that one. It's also very good. If anybody listening, it's think of the war on normal people. So who do you think is going to take the stand now for this future of work? Whose responsibility is it going to be? I don't see it's going to be government. Theory, it's got to be us. Who's in charge of managing this future of work, do you think? What I always learned in all the companies I'm involved with, or BuildDirect or anything else, actually a small number of people who are super committed to something can make a huge difference. Why I ask you to lean into the conversation. By the way, you can push back if you don't believe things that I say, push back. But if we should be responsible, right? So the future of work, maybe, what if this is going to sound crazy? You just heard some things that might sound a little crazy. But are they any more crazy than let's juice a system? Remember, $185 trillion has been created in the last 20 years. I'm not talking about going forward. I'm talking about $185 trillion has been created in the last 20 years out of thin air to produce GDP growth worldwide of 46 trillion. That sounds crazy. All because every single government is doing the same thing. How do we protect jobs? What if we're asking the wrong question? What if we're asking, how do we protect jobs? Every single government, no matter what, that's why they're doing it. Today, stock market collapsed because Corona over-leveraged, things are going to unwind really bad, so every government is saying, we need to stimulate, we need to take interest rates below zero, and we need to print money, all because we need to protect jobs. What if we could build a world where we didn't need as many jobs, and we still had abundance? What if we're asking the wrong question? So I know it sounds crazy, but by the way, as an entrepreneur, as entrepreneurs in here, you make money by seeing what everybody else doesn't see and building to that, right? So sometimes what looks crazy is not crazy at all. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for your thoughts. Just a quick question. This conversation around the future of work is something that my peers and I have been furiously debating, mainly because some of us are aspirational, want to start something or want to see the world change, and other ones just kind of want to ride their life out kind of thing. I guess what would be your suggestion for people who are more early stage career, or even some of my friends who are still in college, as they look towards the future? It seems pretty bleak.
So I see, here's the thing. I don't think it's, so I think it's bleak if we run a system pretending that there's going to be more, and we manipulate a system that drives us versus them narratives that are easily driven by our politicians. That's what I think is bleak. I think the world ends in a really ugly spot. I don't think it's actually bleak. This sounds like a negative. If you saw the companies I'm involved in, and if you did some digging on those companies, massive potential still exists. There is so much potential around company formation today with the technology, with what's ability, tons. If you just keep adding it up though, at some point, it's not net positive for job gains. So we have to fix that. But there's, I'm busy. There's lots of people need work. I know a whole bunch of different companies that are looking for bringing on great people. So there's still lots of potential. Where we live in the world, there's even more potential. At some point, I just like to. I can hold that thought separately from what it adds up all to what society looks like differently. So that's what the book tries to do. But I am really excited about some of the potential platforms that can be created right now.
Great thing.
Yeah, no shortage. Yeah.
So we'll do one way over here, and then we'll do our last one over here, just because we want to make sure we leave some time for networking. Jeff, I think you said you'd hang around.
Yeah, I'll hang around too.
People want to chat. So there's question here, and then we'll get back to networking.
Yes. I heard that you were saying the technology won't grow exponentially and grow as big as it can, and I can see it can. I can see why, and it could very possibly be true in the future, and this could be a problem because as a person with an IT and business background, I don't really know why I should go further either in technology or grow my business industry knowledge. I just want to ask about your opinion and hopefully get some different opinion from you.
So and I know I probably didn't answer the other question, so I can answer these two in the same way, because my kids are going through the same thing. 16, 14, 12, what should they do? What would I teach them? What would I teach them to go into? And it's the same thing I used to say to my employees at BuildDirect. I said, if we're growing at this speed, if your internal rate of growth, you can't just sit here and learn and expect your internal rate of growth can match, right? Because the world's moving so fast, so you're going to have to learn from everywhere, from everyone. I can't specifically tell you this thing you should do, the most important. There are some industries that are going to have some really exciting futures. Health is one, solar is one, at least for the foreseeable. There's and technology applied to those, some pretty significant, and others, some pretty significant opportunities. What I would say, learn from everyone, from everywhere. One of the hacks to learning, if you only have those people around and you're only those people in other people's lives, you'll learn faster, because people want your success and read and everything else. So while I can't tell you this thing you should do, there's a bunch of macro trends in industry that there's lots of opportunities still. And I would just keep learning across the spectrum.
Hey.
Oh, yeah, last one right here.
So you mentioned that you see society is being broken all around the world, right? So who do you think really is to blame? We ourselves not taking initiative, the governments, or is it like the business leaders?
So it's all of the above. But again, until you were in this audience, I probably just put something in your mind that probably isn't in your mind. You can feel it, right? You can feel it in the anxiety that why you can't buy a house, or why is Trump elected, right? But again, these are real. Like, what's become normal. Can you believe it's normal now? And now we think about the next thing that he's going to do or whatever that's abnormal. But on the other side of the political spectrum, it might be just as bad. Because what ends up happening in this environment when people are feeling this anxious, you can manipulate them, right? Hitler was elected after people couldn't feed themselves, right? After, and if you read Mein Kampf and what he talked about in Mein Kampf on people just care about love, hate, and everything else, they're too simple to think about other narratives. So you can, the same people that he ended up abusing, creating that terrible scar on human history, voted for him for the same reasons that we're doing it. We're repeating some of that stuff. It's really scary, right? It's and because we want to believe these narratives, and we want to believe it's not us. That must be that person. And here's what ends up happening if it goes too far. If it goes too far, they become generationally believable, right? And you believe that, and you start to believe that narrative. And here's what politicians do. First, you divide internal, and then you need a bigger enemy, and the bigger enemy needs to be external. And that's how wars cascade. So that is not a really great ending to this thing. I don't want to leave you there. What I'm saying is there is a better way. Right? There is a better way. I'm an entrepreneur. I wouldn't have written the book if I just thought that was the end. I wrote the book because I got tired of watching that kind of narrative unfold, and I decided to do something about it. Thanks.
Great. Well, thanks, Jeff.